I just... Ding! Good night.
I'm sorry. Okay.
That was too good.
Okay, back to the...
You were offended that she twerked in front of you, so you just unmade her head.
Trench
You were just
mix.
like, how fucking dare you do that?
That was... Like, that was rude.
That's rude.
At least let her gut up. Try again.
I don't claim to be anything special. I have a passing interest in physics, but I don't claim to be a physicist. I enjoy recording and editing videos for YouTube and have become familiar with DaVinci Resolve, my editing program, but I don't claim to be a YouTuber. And just the same, I do personally train in armed martial combat. Or I guess better said, I practice swinging a sword around in a way that won't cut off my arm or something. But I'm not professionally trained. I have personal experience and have been taught vicariously through my friends and family and through YouTube videos of proper fights. Such passing interest of medieval combat, video games, and virtual reality has led me, like many others, to Blade Sorcery. Blade Sorcery, as the name suggests, is about fighting with many medieval weapons in a somewhat civilized way. Naturally, many people were interested in VR medieval combat, and they enjoy it as a sort of silly sandbox melee combat VR title. For me, though, it's a really good simulation to help with my combat skills with weapons I'm somewhat familiar with, and train myself with weapons I have no idea how to use properly. And with this game comes a lot of weapons, all of which have their own method of use and technique to help dispatch your enemies. Now, like I said, I'm not an expert in this field, but I do personally train with this martial combat field. But I thought I could at least bring some of my friends with me, who also train in said martial combat. One of which is Dom, despite being a massive 320-pound ogre in real life. But I also brought around my brother, who is in my eyes a good sparring partner. Nothing against you, Dom, but we both barely spar each other anyways. Also, we weren't able to get Lux involved because, well, he made a pretty good counter-argument like Indy did.
Lux, you gonna stay with us here, or you a little busy with your military work?
Nah, swords are gay.
To state also, this is not a tier list. The internet would siege my house like the Crusader Knights on Jerusalem if I tried to compare any of these weapons against one another in a sort of tier list format. Well, they would if I was known on the internet, but I'd also dishonor myself in doing so anyways. Every weapon in the base game is totally viable and completely effective if used properly, save for a few we'll talk about. Also, I have several mods installed. Most don't make an appearance throughout this footage though, but I'll list the notable ones you'll see here in case anyone wants them for themselves. I'm sure some people are going to be asking for it, and I'm willing to deliver. With that said, let's discuss weapons of a more civilized time. Starting off with the skinning knife. Aesthetically, it looks terrible. It's the size of a paring knife like the one you'd use to peel potatoes. Unless you use a peeler, which is probably smarter. But it does functionally work.
It'll kill.
It will kill, but it don't look good.
It can slash, it can stab, it can be useful for dispatching foes, but I see it more as a stealthy weapon, not really fit for actual combat.
I feel like for something like this, it'd be more so like a sort of, like a situational blade,
Yeah, the situation is when you need to stab someone.
I mean, true, but it's like there are better stabs out there,
The dagger is a far superior weapon. It's much longer, double-edged, and it looks really good. I even remember a very special mod that made the dagger overpowered.
I mean, dude, one of the cooler sort of things I remember was a mod for a while. I wish I could see it again. Was dagger bending.
Dagger?
It's basically,
that was...
You would... Oh, yeah. It's such a cool sort of idea.
Dagger bending combined the dagger with Blade Sorcery's magic. You can also spawn more daggers if ever needed, and store them at mass quantities of 7. You could even make daggers explode by enchanting them. Dagger bending is by far one of my favorite mods, and one of my favorite missed mods. Still, the dagger is a small blade, and I really can't justify being used in actual combat by itself. It can be done, sure, but I prefer pairing it with a one-handed sword for a rather effective style.
Yeah, Dom actually had a really good idea though, in that you would actually have it more so kind of a dual wield, but more so.
You would pair it up with a longer blade.
Yes.
Dom told me about this style before filming, and I was naturally intrigued. The point of this style is to be using an arming sword or other short sword in your main hand, and a dagger or smaller blade in your offhand. That helps you take advantage of a clinch and strike in between the armor or vulnerable area. It can also help to finish off a downed opponent as well.
Case in point, thank you.
Though using this style, it's rather important to be comfortable with a short sword. The antique sword is a pretty good option, even by itself too. It's a simple blade, shorter length, no guard, and it looks pretty worn, but it's not bad. Like I said, all weapons are viable in combat, you just need the right skill set to use it effectively. That said, swords against armor aren't really fun. By itself, it works as a short sword, and is effective in both slash and thrust. Paired with a shield, it doesn't have much reach, but it's good to finish off opponents who you just knocked over, and the length is much shorter than other one-handed swords, and that actually gives you a lot more accuracy. It's also another option for dual wield if you don't like daggers. The shorter blade is much easier to maneuver into vulnerable spots while still giving you pretty good range for strikes. The short sword and riding sword are pretty equal in measure. Good length, double edge, nice looking fuller, smooth tapering. I'll give a credit to Warp Frog, these blades look really good. But like all blades and similar slashing weapons, they really are not effective against armor.
Fun thing about trying to fight an armored opponent. Blades are worth decor.
Oh yeah. But where they're not armored,
Is this it? Is this the end? What sequence of events brought me to this point? What abhorrent circumstances led me here? Is this the cruel, painful plan that was orchestrated by a malevolent deity? Who am I really?
if your accuracy isn't shit.
Be it plate armor or chainmail, swords have always struggled against armor. Sure, you can get in between the plates, or just hit where the armor doesn't cover, but as the saying goes, that's much easier said than done. I personally also don't favor the sword and shield combo.
So yeah, this is the war sword, right?
Yes, the war sword. Yes, this is the war sword.
He just caught that full tilt. Like there
Man.
was.
Man,
I was
Man's
all-
throwing him across the room like he's a Marvel villain. Literally vaporizes every single other person, throws the main character across room. You just popped his head like a ship pimple. What did you do?
Saying this might be haram, but I actually prefer two-handed swords over one-handed swords. Seriously, I actually train with the synthetic katana and odachi in real life. And before I get called a weeb by my friends, I did train in basic longsword techniques for about a year.
a lot of you
You're
can definitely
seeing one
tell
now.
I am very much ham-fisted with this. It's been a while since I've done like a longsword per se, but I still at least know a few different sort of things. But I think one thing is that I don't have like real-world models or anything, so I can't really show some of the more interesting things. And also, my style's a little more leaning towards
Asian.
stuff like katanas. I'm much more Asian, Japanese, that sort of stuff. Not because I'm a weeb. It's actually more so
Yeah,
fitting style.
legit coder. I get to see. Okay.
Yeah,
little
people are always
editorial-
going to be like, "Oh, you
little
fucking weeb. Of
editorial
course
thing.
you'd have a fucking
Connor.
katana." Yes, I do,
Connor.
but at the same time, it's more a fit of style. It's more so my ways of combat. That's all it is.
I was thinking, oh, you weep, motherfucker.
I personally didn't enjoy the style and favored the katana more, and as it turns out, it's a much better fit for me. I do, however, like the techniques of the longsword. There's some downright tricky things you can do with a longsword, trust me. And don't worry, I'm not talking about ending them rightly with the Reverend Sword's cameo pommel.
The waka waka looking ass ball.
Yeah, fucking waka looking ass fucking pommel.
Love it.
That aside, the longswords in game lack any sort of grabbable surface along the blade, or anywhere else beyond the handle. Though, then again, why would you want to grab the sharp part of a longsword? That's where the hurt is. Well, the half sword, actually. Yes, that is a viable way of fighting with a longsword, oddly enough. It gave the wielder far greater control of the tip of the blade to better pierce through lightly armored sections. Hell, there's even several scriptures and manuals that say to flip your sword upside down and swing it at armored foes hilt first. This technique is called the murder stroke, or mordhau. It turns a normal slashing and thrusting sword, effective against lightly armored or unarmored combatants, into a makeshift piercing and bludgeoning mace, which should be terrifying to any heavily armored foes. There are mods that allow you this freedom to half-sword and Mordhau your blade, but honestly, it'd just be nicer to have this for the base game. Warpfrog, if you're watching this by some miracle of God, see if you can get someone to implement this for the 1.0 release. I want to Mordhau armor opponents. Actually, I'd like to just Mordhau in real life, while sparring and stuff. Seriously, Mordhauing is fun.
Speaking of sparring,
Yes. Yes.
Go on.
Go on.
I have brain fart. I'm sorry.
Dude, brain fart. Dude, I heard you blue screen. You
That
good?
was literally a blue screen there. Holy shit. Anyways.
Yeah, that was a hard system reset.
Oh.
Yeah.
Bruh, I heard the fucking Windows error noise from here.
Rounding off the swords are the great swords. At this point, there's so much weight being swung around, anyone you hit in the right spot will just start flying. Great swords are heavy, requiring both hands at all times, but that weight also allows you to bully foes with great force. Though we're still talking about swords, armor isn't as much of a problem, but this is still a sword we're talking about, so...
Especially for the great swords, too.
For the larger weapons, yeah, you're gonna...
Oh, Jesus Christ.
The fucking pause there when we both saw that. We also saw that, it's like, oh, well, that happened.
Okay, bad example. I remember first seeing the antique greatsword and I was actually genuinely impressed. The greatsword itself is nicely made and, well, distracting for how similar it looks to us TO2 vets.
The Islander.
The Islander. Yeah, even I can't disagree.
Hey,
Being
look,
a
got
TF2
ahead.
player. I mean, yeah, I already got ahead. Hell
Got
yes.
I didn't do it! Anyway.
There,
That's what I was
second
trying to
head.
say. 5 second rule. I'm sorry, I was just remembering that lazy purple video. Just...
5-second rule!
But the antique greatsword is just as cool. But before either of them came to existence, there was the Claymore. Maybe it's my Scottish heritage coming out, but the Claymore is just fun. Axes are complex weapons to talk about. Swords have slash and thrust, making them very versatile and very useful weapons. But axes are much more just a weighted slash. And that's about it. The hatchet is one such example. It's got a really small head, making it much harder to aim with very little damage to throw around. But as I was informed, that's about what this size should be. I guess I really shouldn't be surprised, seeing as natives have used tomahawks and those are still effective today. The axe, though, is much more up my alley. Larger head, bludgeoning surface on the back, this suits me a lot better, but I'm still left wanting more. The war axe helps bring a lot more versatility with a far better shaped head and even a spike in the back, which actually is both form and function. The spike allows the wielder to pierce through armor and help finish off opponents.
So while
Yeah, like-
the coat itself will feel heavy to put on, it's not actually heavy to bear.
Yeah. Also, can I just appreciate how easily Connor just smashed that motherfucker with that?
Oh, absolutely. That was very, very difficult.
That was some fucking. That was some proper anime shit right there. That just,
The real fun begins, though, with two-handed axes, like the old lumber axe. Sure, it's a simple wedge, but an axe head is designed to split through wood. Is it wrong to say it can also split through flesh and bone? Granted, it's not designed for combat, but it's still effective at making people join the Space Force. A couple axes that are designed for combat are the Northern Axe, being my favorite weapon in this game, and the Bardiche. The Northern Axe looks fantastic, and makes me want to learn how to properly wield a bearded axe IRL. Plus, it's a very effective weapon to use to decimal someone.
Yeah, I fucking love this thing. Oh, Jesus!
oh god!
Oh my god! God. That was straight up decimaled
outta
right
here.
there. You tell me
That
that
was
wasn't
decimaled.
decimaled. That was
That was
straight up
decimaled.
decimaled. Just caught it right in the fucking face.
The Bardiche, on the other hand, is criminal in its effectiveness. It is always a great time when you use the Bardiche, as you have a massive striking surface, you can choke up into the blade, giving you far better defense and control. You can even thrust with it like it's a spear. Both the Northern Axe and the Bardiche are my number 1 and 2 favorite weapons in Blade Sorcery. No contest. I know I said this wasn't going to be a tier list, but I think we can all agree. Spears would very much be S tier. They're the simplest to use, but most effective at what they do. And that is to stab. Plus, with large shaft, you can keep an enemy away from you very easily. If they get too close, stab them. If they get past the stabby part, just whack them with it. The javelin is nothing really to write home about, but it does get the job done. The boar spear, though, is far better and is both in form and function very effective. Hell, even the wings on the winged spears ensure that you don't end up losing your spear because you stab some things too deep.
Right here, with my Konomo that I made by hand. Yeah, just beat it up with it.
Just beat him with it, you know?
That's kind of the reason why the boar spear exists. Anytime you end up actually stabbing a boar with a spear, it doesn't get stuck or lodged in there to where you can't pull it out, or get dragged along with it. But all spears are viable, no matter how they're made. The only problem I have with spears in Blade Sorcery is I have a chronic skill issue with them.
Yeah, I am very clearly not good with
Like,
spears.
that's
Dom
not
is
playing
very
guard.
good with spears, but I am nowhere close to it. Dom is fucking scary with spears, man, I tell you.
Every time I pull up my fucking Naginata, Connor starts getting scared.
I start hearing boss music.
I'm far too inaccurate to make spears an immediate pick for my arsenal, and I'm naturally very disappointed in myself. Maces are kind of a difficult weapon to explain because they look simple, big thing go whack, but it's not really that simple. A mace is meant to defeat armor by either caving in very thin or weak armor, thus making it less effective for piercing weapons, or deal internal damage beyond the armor by just violently vibe checking whatever the armor contains, that usually being a person. Granted, for my game I use a mod called Headbreaker, so if I smash someone's head with enough blunt damage, their head goes pop. This does make blunt weapons far more effective in dispatching foes, especially those that have extremely high health, but I won't let that sway me too much. The blacksmith hammer is not meant to be a weapon at all, but it is used to make armor. That doesn't mean it can't be used to unmake the armor.
It made the armor, bitch, it can unmake it.
I made you. This hammer is one similar that made your armor. It can unmake it.
Hammer's all like, I put you into this world, I can take you out of
You
it.
out of it!
It's like your mom
Yeah,
when
really.
she ends up saying, like, you know, I brought you into this world, I can take you out of it.
out.
Wrong. Anything
Hey, for
similar
real,
to
if you
what
grew up
exactly
with
first
parents
made
like
it
that, you
can
had some bad
unmake
fucking
it.
parents.
The trench mace is actually kind of an interesting weapon. It's a big, heavy chunk of metal, so it can bash armor, sure, but it also has some very small studs. What are those for? They're actually meant to focus all of the energy of someone swinging around that heavy lump of iron into a much smaller point. Essentially, it becomes a heavy, not so deeply piercing spear that can go through armor while also just dumping the rest of the energy into the rest of the armor. It's a simple design with a couple of tweaks, but the method and results remain mostly the same. The flange mace is more of what a proper mace looks like, or at least what most people think when they hear mace. It's similar to the trench mace, but with a bit more piercing than just denting. Sure, the spike is a bit much, but some soldiers have found a way to use it.
Back of that.
Oh, Jesus! Oh, God! I think I just stabbed her eye out! Oh, God!
Fucking decimal.
Literally decimaled into the fucking eye. Are you okay? Oh, my God!
No!
Two-handed weapons still remain king in this game, and the blunt weapons do not disappoint. The wooden mallet is simple, but it still works to bonk people into horny jail, so take it what you will and use it as you see fit. And then there's the maul. I really don't need to say anything about this, right? It's a massive two-handed iron hammer that relocates people's kneecap privileges to Brazil.
You are going to Brazil!
And completely destroys any armor it comes across. It's completely ridiculous in almost every single way. Economically, financially, in combat, in proving a point.
Connor, I want to see you break a motherfucker's spine with that thing.
Yeah, just hit him in the
Sure thing.
stomach.
How's that for you?
Perfect.
I don't need to say anything about it, do I? It's just ridiculous. And I love it. The Flamed War Mace can also be summed up in the same way, but it's just a bit more versatile. If you combine them all in the Flamed Mace, you'd create a weapon that the United Nations would have to sign a binding resolution to keep you from destroying anyone you come into contact with. Seriously, it's a mace with a spike on top of the head on a long pole. It's essentially just a massive bunch of weight there with a spike on there. You can use this thing like a spear to keep enemies away and bash anyone that gets too close.
Yeah, they made the PvE.
You know, Connor, hold on. You were trying to hit motherfuckers with a spear for the longest fucking time.
Finally, we get to the exotic weapons. These are weapons that can't really be classified under anything covered before them. First up is the dual bladed staff, and I am not skilled enough to use this. I seriously think Warp Frog added this in just to fuck with people. It's a weird weapon no one really knows how to use properly, as far as I know. Not to brag or anything, but I have a vague understanding on how to use double blade weapons like this, but nowhere near the experience to use it properly. It's weird, awkward, and it just makes me feel like a tool when I'm using it. The wrist blades are not as cool as most people would really hope for. They're not as concealable as Assassin's Creed's own blades, but they do allow your punches to stab instead of just strike. They're fun to use, and are even good for sneaking around with, and they also allow you to use sorceries while you're holding them, so you can just infuse them with one hand instead of having to use your other hand to do it. For lacking a cool factor, they're greatly versatile for what they're meant to do. And at last, the rapier. A much more unexpectedly fun and effective weapon for both me and Dom. Stabbing someone in the base game usually will just kill them immediately, if it goes through all the way to the torso up. That does make the rapier very effective in dispatching enemies with lighter armor, or even chainmail.
Your rapier is actually a bit more simple than using a long.
Oh yeah, because you only have to really worry about thrusts.
It does do slash damage, but naturally it's a better thrusting weapon. To me, it's a very fun weapon to use. I'm not a fencer by any means, I'm barely a swordsman to begin with. But using the rapier and performing a riposte with it, and actually hitting your mark, feels amazing. You really do feel like you've outmaneuvered your opponent and got a clean riposte out of it. As I've said before, all of these weapons are viable in combat. They have their strengths and weaknesses, but they're all equally capable in dispatching foes. But the weapon is only as viable as its wielder.
You can commission that Italian smith to make you a full suit of plate all you want, but that's not gonna stop a 6'4" Bubba peasant with a fucking log from walking up behind you and hitting you in the back of the head.
Your weapons and armor are only as good as you are with them.
Exactly.
So, if anything, that also goes to everyone else. No matter what sort of weapon or armor you're using, train with it. Always.
Train. Like me, I train regularly with my Konobo.
Train with them. Understand their strengths and learn to get yourself into that advantage. Practice mitigating their weaknesses to be more effective. And most importantly, train to understand yourself. And you will be unstoppable. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really do appreciate everyone who comes around and just watches any of my videos. I really do appreciate it. I recently just now had a massive explosion in views on my latest short, and I'm shocked, but not surprised. It makes a lot of sense as to why I could see that exploding as it did, but it's still shocking to me just how it just exploded. But moving beyond that, thank you guys for watching this video. If at all you enjoyed this video, leave a like down below. I really do appreciate it when you do. That tells me you really enjoyed this and you want to see something similar to it. Talk in the comments down below with some very civilized people on the internet. Go and check out some of my other videos. I have a few different videos I've made. I have Into the Radius Scavenger. I have my main series, the H3 VR Taking Hold Firearms tier list. I've been working very hard on that. I will probably get one soon after a couple more videos. We'll see. And of course, you know, go and check that stuff out. If this is like your 5th or 6th video and you seem to be liking what I do, or you want to keep up with me, you can of course subscribe. But all of this is entirely optional. You simply being here at the end of the video is far more than I could ever ask for. And I really do appreciate it so very much. So thank you. And no matter where you are in the world, no matter what it is you're going through, all of these are entirely optional, but one thing I demand of you is this. Stay safe out there.
What the fuck? Hello?
Hook his hair squig!
Yeah, it's mods like that can be a little weird. Don't worry about it. Anyways, so getting back to it.